Hello and welcome to another edition of the RevOps Lab podcast. Our guest today is Alexandra Schimpf. Hello, Alexandra. Welcome.
Hi, Philip.
Yeah, Alexandra, we met at the RevOps meetup in London that Weflow organized together with Crowblocks earlier this year. I think it was in the beginning of June, if I remember correctly. And we got talking, and you're actually from Germany, but you live in London right now. What do you do in London?
Yeah, no thanks. I have been here for 8 years now, originally from Germany, and all I've been doing here is working and partially studying. So yeah, I have been in sales operations, revenue operations, my whole adult career really. And yeah, really enjoy living in the city. It's an amazing city for everyone who wants to come and visit. A lot of things to do, but also like on the job market, a lot of possibilities. And it's always very exciting to look into different companies and what they do. So yeah, excited to live here.
Yeah, great. I think I was very lucky when I came to London earlier this year because it was the sun was shining, everybody was smiling. I mean, I would say it's one of the maybe a bit of a rarer thing in London. I don't know.
It depends where you live. I also lived in Berlin and studied there. So Berlin also has this gray side, I'd say. But this week is very nice in London. So yeah, everybody's enjoying the sunshine.
Yeah, that's good. Great. So you worked at I think there's like two major career stops that we want to talk about as part of this recording today. One was at WP Engine, which is, if I remember correctly, sort of like a hosting provider for particularly WordPress environments. And now, currently, you work at Causaly, which is something completely different. I'm not even going to attempt to explain it, but I would love if you could kind of like maybe draw some clear distinction between WP Engine, your previous company, and now Causaly, just explain it.
Yeah, of course. So WP Engine was basically a lot of customers. So this like we had a very, very huge volume on deals. Whereas here now, Causaly, biotech company, I also don't want to go too much into the product because I just don't know myself. We are an AI company and we work with big pharma. So there is a lot of changes. It's very different because we do have a target market. So we are actually only focused on a specific number of customers. Whereas my previous company, it was kind of like a free fall. It could be one person who wants to host their website. It could be a huge company who wants to host their website. So it is very, very different. Both sides have their pros and cons, I would say, but it was a very big change. And maybe also like just some more background. I've been 5 years at WP Engine, so I've seen the company grow quite a bit as well. At the beginning, we had like 500 people, and now they're probably at 1,500 people. So it was quite a rapid growth. And now here it's like 120 people, very, very early stage, but a lot of impact which I can have, which is super exciting. So I think what I've seen at WP Engine at the beginning, I'm kind of like experiencing it now a little bit. So it was nice to just like think back and just realize, okay, what did I do back then versus how did it grow? So would be nice to see exactly the same growth or like a similar growth at this company here now.
Yeah. With 120 people, I think you're still at that sweet spot where you basically know everybody by name, or you can if you want to, and everybody knows you. And I don't know, it's just like it's a bit easier with like the flow of information and knowledge. And then with 500 people, it's basically impossible to, know everyone and what they're doing. And there's a lot of like just unknowns, I would say, in the organizational structure.
Yeah, I think communication is key. And I mean, now I can just like go to the other desk and just ask questions. And then obviously we have some people based in the US, so that's not that possible. But yeah, if it gets to like 1,500 people, you don't know anyone by name. But it was interesting to just go back to that state. And I think also like on the customer side, so looking at the customer basis, we had way more customers at WP Engine. It was a huge amount. We sometimes didn't even know our customers because they could just self-serve and sign up on our website. And here it is very different because it's huge companies. We do know them. I think the whole world probably knows them. And it is a very different approach. So you have to treat your customers differently because the ACV is way higher. You have to understand how exactly, like, what do they want? How do we need to make sure that we have a little bit of a different approach, like a we call it white glove approach, where we're trying to understand how we can support our customer the best way. Not saying that WP Engine did not do that. Obviously, they also wanted to make sure the customers are satisfied, and we retained them. But it was a different situation, just based on the volume of the customer base.
Yeah. I mean, so basically with WP Engine, the market was huge. Basically, anyone who's interested in hosting a website, could even be that they're not even thinking about WordPress yet. They're just like exploring different options, and then WP Engine just makes it look super easy to get started with WordPress. Or maybe they are like WordPress aficionados, and they're looking for like a particular solution. While with Causaly, I think, like you said, right, like there's a few big pharma companies, and then it's about the projects that are started within those companies, and you try to get into those, I don't know, clinical studies, I think, somewhere in that
like
area.
Clinical, exactly. Yeah, it's like the research bit, which we're trying to cover. And yeah, I mean, it is a different approach, but the same way. I think like sales, before that I was also in sales operations. Now I'm in revenue operations. But the beauty was, because I was the first sales operations person in the EMEA team, I kind of like did a little bit of everything. So like now coming here, I am now actually officially responsible for the little bit of everything, which is exciting. So working with the marketing team, with the sales team and the customer success team, but not even those three teams. And I feel like this might be something which we will see in future more often, because the sales cycle is so complex, and you have legal involved, you have product involved, you're trying to understand, is the kind of like, do we have a value for the company, for our customer? What is the value for our customer? How can they then go back to their internal stakeholders and present Causaly in front of their stakeholders? So working on all of those little bits, and creating a sales process around that is quite an important piece, but also not make it too complex, because the product is already complex, the sales cycle is complex, but making sure that you have a way to create something like a baseline foundation, which is literally like a tick box exercise. That was like my first job here, was, okay, let's make our sales process consistent, which sounds very easy, but it really wasn't. Because at the end, like the outcome should be something which we can apply to all the deals, which isn't really possible because they're quite unique. And also make sure that the adoption is there, so that our sales guys are actually following those sales processes. So what we did is we really cut it down to, this is the foundation. And then if there is something which we need to customize, that kind of goes on top. So I think what we tried to create was consistency, making sure we can track something. So having something afterwards which we can go back to and see, okay, is this successful? Is this not successful? And then like the consistent maintenance. Like you have to make sure you are going back to the sales process and understand, okay, is it still applicable? Has anything changed, especially in a super, super fast-paced business like Causaly is? Do we see like different trends? Do we need to adjust anything? Having those relationships to the AEs as well, because this is the person who is using that sales process. So what I usually do is making sure I have catch-ups with them, understand their pain points. I mean, nobody likes to do admin, so they also don't like to do admin. So I am kind of like the person who is the balance act of not too much admin for the AEs, but enough information for the business. And that is usually a little bit of a different, difficult situation. But if you have the right relationships, and that's maybe like one thing which I learned at WP Engine, is to create solid relationships and to make sure that the RevOps organization is like a trustworthy partner in the business, so that people can actually rely on their team, come if they have any issues, and also have someone who they can trust. So you have like the trustworthy persona or like team. And I'm trying to do that here. So I'm trying to create a team which is looked up to, and all the leaders just know, okay, if we need, it's kind of like when we call the CRM as our source of truth. So it's like the team of truth, I'd say.
Yep.
It would be nice to have a team which is so well connected to the different teams that they actually understand the business very well.
Yeah. Okay, great. So maybe if I can just recap that briefly. Yeah. So basically, WP Engine, it was like, high volume, but probably like probably a lot lower ACV than at Causaly. Then sort of like low touch, a lot of self-service, but very clear processes, probably like also a bigger sales team.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think like it was probably much more possible to really create like a from start to end sales process that is like clearly trackable and also pretty consistent over time, I would assume, in like a mature market like web hosting is. I think like the things that you do as a customer and like how you go into a product like that, I think are relatively defined, versus at Causaly, it's actually quite hard to do that. So it's because you have this white glove approach that you mentioned, and every kind of like customer is a bit different. Also, the projects that they kind of like think about working with you guys, and so what you try to do there is really just have like a sort of like a foundational level of process that is somewhat comparable between the different customers and customer journeys, but only to like a certain extent, because the rest is anyway so custom that it's hard to standardize. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I'd say so. And it's also, I think, enablement and adoption is like a bigger piece as well, because if you make it too customized, people won't use it. And I've learned that in the past as well, that you need to make it as simple as I can explain it to you, and I can explain to someone who's not like a person who's into the product, so that people will adopt to it and will actually, we can get the kind of like the insights we want out of it.
Right. And probably it's like also the product marketing element, I would assume, also plays a bigger role in a company, because you need to explain the product. It's not that straightforward, probably. Maybe it's a bit of a new category. I don't know, but I would assume it's like it requires more explanation than, oh, you can buy like a domain name and host your website here.
100%, yes. This is where then I think that cross-functional piece is coming more and more in, because you do have to make sure the product team is involved. Like, can they articulate everything what's coming up? Can our AEs articulate it? If not, they need to have some support, putting that all into a system, like actually understanding, do we know that this deal had all of that support, or do we know that this deal had kind of like our science team? We have a lot of different teams who are supporting a deal, and actually putting it into, we have HubSpot, putting it into HubSpot and understanding what happened to a certain deal was not existent when I came. It was just like, okay, we are having this deal and we are kind of tracking it, but having like earlier indicators than just it's closed on revenue or it's a created deal, but like understanding, okay, this is a person we've spoken to about the product, we've spoken to about our roadmap, we've spoken to about all different things, and now we are at a point where we think we can create a deal. But that is usually not really tracked anywhere. So we try to make sure that we find those indicators and track those indicators and have different KPIs around that, and not just create a deal and then we are looking at it from there, which we did have at WP Engine. It was a bit different, where we just looked at, okay, what is the inbound channels we have? And I actually created, like I worked on a project which was looking at the different drivers. So we were looking at our inbound drivers and try to understand, this is deal creation, it's coming from, I don't know, this website campaign, it's coming from that campaign, then this is how many deals we've closed, what is the win rate, what is the average contract value, and looking at all of those indicators. And because the deal cycle was quite short, whatever we did today or whatever we changed today, you could see the impact in 2 weeks' time. Right. Whereas now, whatever we do today is probably going to be an impact in 6 months' time, which makes it a huge difference. And also like something which I had to get used to, because I was quite used to, okay, we're seeing a trend, we need to make some changes, we need to make sure we hit our targets for this quarter or this month. Whereas now it's a little bit, what are the earlier trends which we can see, and what can we impact at the earlier stages so that we can see an impact kind of like quicker. I could see that being like a very, very big change between the two companies.
Yeah. Okay. Like, was that the biggest challenge for you, switching from WP Engine to Causaly, or was it something else?
I think it's a few things, because I have been at WP Engine for 5 years. I was like a subject matter expert for a lot of things. So people would usually come to me and just like ask me for literally sometimes even IT questions. Whereas now it took me a while to just understand how the business works. What do we try to achieve? how can I have a bigger impact? Because obviously revenue operations, especially at this stage of a company, is usually the team with the biggest impact because they see the trends and they can action on them, and they can educate kind of like the different stakeholders and are also that red line between the different stakeholders, I'll say, but also just creating relationships. So you have to have relationships with the stakeholders, with the different VPs, with finance, with products, and I had to be very patient here to make sure that I create those relationships, and it just takes time. So I think at any company you go to, it will take you probably up to a year to get used to not just the different changes within your actual job, but also making sure that you have relationships, that create relationships, which will then end up in being that trustworthy partner for that stakeholder.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. And were there any like transferable skills as well? Like, was there something you could just like, okay, this is basically the same, even though like business motion, go-to-market motion is very different. I can totally take that from WP Engine to Causaly.
Yeah, I think the approach of having like a foundation, that was something I learned at WP Engine. Just being able to cut down a task and just say, okay, in order to achieve this, I don't know, increase conversion rates, which is where we even start. Like, what am I supposed to do there if I just have to increase conversion rates? Sounds easy, but it's not that easy. But being able to actually cut it down into actionable tasks, I've learned that very early because this is what you kind of like do. I think like I also want to become a teacher. I think this is like a good solution finding for a problem. So that was something I could adopt you can adopt that in any job, but I think revenue operations, to make sure that you also have a way to prioritize things, because it is quite a lot of, like, you have a lot of tasks on a daily basis, and you could literally work 24/7 probably without stopping. And then also having like maybe some time to step back and oversee, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? Is this the right approach? And then being very honest to yourself and to the business and just say, actually, we might do something completely different now because this is not not the outcome which we wanted to see. So having like those, I would say, like more strategic ways of looking at things. Yeah, I could adopt that here very well.
Okay. I'm curious with Causaly. I think obviously you have less deals, but then each deal is probably a lot more important than a WP Engine. So it really matters if a deal goes kind of like to closed one or not. And yeah, the pain probably is like very, very, you can really feel it if it doesn't work out. So I'm curious sort of like what kind of like strategies Causaly or you specifically are applying to manage these larger contract deals. How to get them over the finish line.
Yeah. I'd say there's a few things. So in order to be not just dependent on two main deals, I actually am a big believer to still have kind of like a mid-market bucket where you do have some smaller deals. You have to have an understanding of how much money and time will that cost us, and if the cost is just too high or if we get something out of it. So that is a very, very important piece. But in order to cover what we are forecasting and to cover kind of like our targets and our plan numbers, it is valuable to have that bucket and just to understand, okay, for this deal, we actually have 5 other deals which could cover it. Could be an approach. What we also do, which is, I think, I see that being kind of like more and more important in the future, is that you don't have just an AE working on a deal. We have a team working on a deal. So it is a team effort. We have somebody from the customer success team. We have the actual AE. The VP is usually also involved. There's like also seniority kind of like trends and or horizontal trends, which is great because this is how you win deals. It has to be a team effort. You have to be able to discuss things and bring them up very quickly. Because if there is something which is already like an issue, which we can see at the beginning, that will just increase towards the middle, I guess. So working in teams is super useful. And I think that is also probably the future of working on larger deals.
Yeah. I mean, I like, just from a personal experience, I also just think it's super good if especially if it's a technical product and like, okay, you're interested, the AE understands you're a valid opportunity. The next thing that happens actually that a solution engineer or someone with like a focus like that, or a customer success manager, or something like this, just to stick with B2B SaaS terminology here, just joins the next meeting and allows like the conversation to go a lot deeper into the technical details and start building trust. And like I think like the earlier you meet your customer success partner for the future, I think the better for a deal to actually really be successful, because it like shows the company cares, and you can already start building a relationship with that person. And I think you can only benefit from that. Obviously super hard to achieve if you have high volume, low ACV, but I think in your market, obviously, this feels like super, super important and very crucial.
I think it brings up also a question around, where do renewals live? Like, do they live with sales or do they live with customer success? Because what sometimes happens is, yes, we have a deal, it goes to customer success, sales never gets involved afterwards, and it's now just a customer success piece. And then if there is an upgrade potential, it kind of like goes to sales, and then sales doesn't really know what happened to that customer, which I think is the most horrible approach. So it should be a kind of like throughout the whole life cycle, there needs to be some updates or like some communication, using different tools to create that transparency and making sure they talk to each other, the tools do and the people do, so that you have an understanding of, okay, this customer, and because there aren't that many customers, it's easier. If it's obviously a company with like thousands of customers, it's a different approach. But we do have the beauty is we do have that opportunity to do that. So you have an understanding on the sales side, what happened to a customer, on the customer success side, what happened to a customer. We also have science, like a science team, because our product is that technical. So like our solution engineers are actually scientists usually, who are trying to make sure that the product is valuable for our customers. So their team is also involved. So it's literally making sure that we have the right information flowing throughout the whole teams, and also understanding if the customer still has value in the tool and tracking that.
Yeah. I think you brought up a few very interesting things. Forecasting was one of them, but I want to put that on hold for a second. And the other thing that you mentioned was just indicators. So curious, like what kind of like KPIs you are using to understand, is that like a valid deal? Is that deal going in the right direction? Or is this deal at risk of stalling?
I think it's even like before the deal exists, there is a few indicators which I like to track, because we don't create deals on a daily basis currently. It's not just like a weekly update, which we will see like a trend to. So I usually like to go back to kind of like the steps until I can see a weekly update. So let's say we have a lead come in. How many leads do we have come in? Did we have the right outreach to those people? What was the outreach to the people? How many did we get into a meeting? How was that meeting? Was it a potential, like, was it a qualification, a disqualification? So actually creating a process around all of that before the deal even exists was super, like, that's what I did here as well when I joined. That was super valuable. And I think a lot of AEs found it valuable because they could actually see, and again, I'm going to use that word again, there was transparency there, and they could actually see and understand what am I supposed to do and have some clarity, which sometimes doesn't happen between marketing and sales, because marketing kind of like has their KPIs and they tick all the boxes and say, well, we created 500 MQLs, we're good. But then if sales doesn't know what to do with them, that's not going to ever impact your deals on the other side, right? So making sure that we have that communication again. We have X MQLs, we have Y SALs, and then did we create deals? If not, why didn't we? Having a cycle back and actually giving that feedback back to marketing. And then if we did create a deal, great. Why did we create that deal? So again, having that cycle back and creating like a loop of feedback. And then even like just sticking to the feedback loops for a bit. Once it is a customer, what is the customer doing, what is the customer interested in, and actually having then also another cycle to kind of like the marketing team and the sales team. So creating those feedback loops is super important, which I think that usually is then again like a supporter of the cross-functional communication and so on. Again, other tools which can help here, like we have Gong, which is super useful because we have the conversations, we've created like different flows, which are actually giving us all the information in like our Slack channels where we can see, okay, they've mentioned this product feedback here. Customer success team has this conversation with them because they are the closest to the customer usually at the end. And then marketing can also have a look at it and see, oh, okay, this is what the customer is currently interested in. Let's make sure our content is aligned with that, right? So having all of that in place, yes, the initial question was KPIs, so tracking kind of like that leads flow. Then when we have a deal, trying to understand what is happening. So we have like, as I said at the beginning, we have a checkbox. And a checkbox is, we spoke to that person. Is it a champion? Is it a coach? And having like that sort of methodology, but we don't really stick to one methodology. We kind of like have multiple methodologies in there. And also like demos, what we look at is, have we actually shown them the product? Who has shown them the product? Was it somebody from science or was it somebody from pre-sales? So looking at kind of like the demos we have, and that is usually a very good indicator. And the more you get into the deal stages, the kind of like high value our demos are. So you can see if somebody's already at a stage where they've spoken to pre-sales, they've spoken to sales, they've spoken to our scientists. That is already a way higher conversion rate than we created a deal and the person doesn't contact us anymore because something happened. So kind of trying to understand what is happening throughout the deal and what does that communication look like between the coach or the champion.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like it's very activity heavy. So basically understanding, okay, how many meetings were scheduled? What was like the no-show rate? Essentially like how many emails did we send? What was the reply rate? How long did it take them to reply? And then looking at the meetings themselves. I mean, like, I think fully get it, right? This is like shameless plug, but I mean, this is the number one reason why we built also meeting and email tracking into Weflow. It's because we really find that this is such a strong indicator of understanding what actually the conversations are and how fast they are, how fluent they are, in order to understand whether this is a real deal or not, and whether it's stalling. And I think if you then add in the conversation intelligence piece and you have these keyword trackers included in there, and of course Gong is like a category leader here, no question, then I think it just becomes extremely valuable. But do I get you right that you're not using then like a specific sales methodology, or do you use that as well, like Medic or MedPick or something like this?
Yeah, I think we kind of like put together a few methodologies because Medic would be too, I don't want to say simple, but it would be too much of a checkbox exercise. So we have some sort of metrics which we want to track, which we kind of like put into the different deal stages and what needs to happen throughout the deal stage in order to move forward. But there is also like kind of like a split between who needs to be involved at what stage. So like from our side, and then from their side, so from our customer side, what kind of persona do we need to speak to at what stage? So there is a little bit more of a like complexity around the personas as well, which I don't know if Medic is a great methodology to actually cover that. So we had to just have like our own little bit of customized, again, shows how complex the product is, to have like a more customized and put a little bit more complexity into the methodology. Yes. But just like going back to what you just said, like I would love to have a tool which tells me or gives me updates whenever it's kind of like a deal moves a stage and actually checks those checkbox itself. So I was just thinking about like Gong is great, but at the same time, there's still so much we can do and so much Gong will probably do. And probably Weflow we do, because it would be great. And I think that is the number one question which AEs get is, give me an update on your deal. And there is already options to give an update on your deal without having like a human actually explaining the update. But it would be amazing to actually see, okay, those 5 boxes have been checked because the AI has checked it. So I'm waiting until that day comes where there is a tool like that, which actually provides us kind of like with our information, then we can double check that with the AEs and say, okay, great, it's aligned, or if it's not aligned, why it isn't aligned, and having those discussions in future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's also something we are working on, and I think solving to some extent. But I hear you. This definitely would be maybe I'll add this to the product backlog. Why not? We'll explore it. We'll explore it more. Yeah, cool. One thing also that you mentioned was forecasting. Definitely wanna talk about that as well, because I mean, like, we have a couple of customers who also work more on the enterprise level, and for them forecasting is quite hard. I always feel like for the mid-tier, like mid-market companies that are our customers, it's easier for them to do proper forecasting and build a good forecasting process, because yes, they also have these super big deals, but then very often they just don't forecast on them. So they focus more on the bulk of like larger deals, like basically like the large amount of deals with like a medium-sized ACV, because that's easier to forecast on from the bottom-up approach. While these enterprise deals often require sort of like a top-down forecast, but really could go either way. So yeah, curious how you do it at Causaly, and what your approach there is to forecasting.
Yeah, I think that is something which we can definitely improve on. But because we do have just a handful of deals and there isn't that much movement usually, like it probably is this happened, now we think it will probably close, or this happened, we think the probability is a bit smaller. So there's like a probability aspect of it. And also currently it is not really our sales team. Like you said, it is more the top-down approach. So our VPs are involved in that as well. So I think moving forward, it would be great to have a way to kind of like forecast on those deals, like this, the mid-market deals, which we also have. It's not just like the 1 million deals. But because the higher ACV deals are just so important and so impactful, there isn't necessarily like a methodology we currently have. And there isn't also necessarily a proper process, other than we have a spreadsheet and we put it onto a spreadsheet. And this is like one thing which I also wanted to bring up, is like the spreadsheet revenue operations and spreadsheets is kind of like, there is a love-hate relationship. Sometimes more hate than love, unfortunately. And I think also like moving forward, it can't just live in spreadsheets. But again, there is complexity to it. There is so much which is customized to what each company does and how they do it. It's very difficult to have it all in one tool, because it will be, at the end, it will be a tool and a spreadsheet. It will never be just a tool. There is always going to be a spreadsheet. So that is like one thing which I've seen here. It's very spreadsheet heavy at the moment on the forecasting side. And because it is like our senior leadership team who is kind of like making those decisions, what are we forecasting? How does it look like? Having like weekly meetings, which where we just discuss that. I would say we can improve it. And I like your kind of like thinking of that mid-market is usually a good team, which probably uses your solution the most as well. We tried to do it in Gong as well. I could not get that much adoption on it. People did just not really see it as priority yet, but I see it in future. So I think that will be something which we'll definitely do in a few months' time, because we will have, like, I can see it in the pipeline, kind of like we will have a few deals which will kind of like have that approach instead of just having a handful of bigger deals. So yeah, definitely something to improve on, going away from spreadsheets. And at WP Engine was very different, I have to say. Maybe like that's a bit of an easier example, because we had Clary where we did everything really. And we actually bought Clary while I was there. So at the beginning, it was also very spreadsheet heavy. And people like each AE would just put in their forecast into a Google Forms, and then that would be in a spreadsheet. And then we kind of like tracked what happened and who's forecasting how much. And then we used that information, then had like the manager decide if they agree on it or not. So there was a little bit of an method there. And I think people usually like spreadsheets because they think, okay, I can see historical data, I can see how it's trending, and there's that education piece missing of tools can also do that. You just have to know how to use them. So we had a very big push on adoption of Clary, and we did get to a point where we actually had a great adoption, and that became like our forecasting tool. But it does take a lot of change management, I would say, because people do have their habits and rely on certain things, and then it does take a long time to actually make them adopt to a tool like the forecasting tool.
Yeah, I mean, this is every time I have a conversation around forecasting, right? It's basically the outcome is always quite similar. It's basically, forecasting. It's not like a thing you just do. It's like a full process, and then forecasting. A good forecast is the outcome of a good sales process. So, I mean, I would even make the case that there should be a future where basically AEs don't even need to put in like a forecast call. Basically the tool does it for them based on all the metrics that it's able to capture, like meetings, emails, conversations, just like updates to the different fields in the CRM. And then, the tool will just say like, this should be included in the forecast. This shouldn't be included in the forecast. But of course, this also requires like the system to be set up in a way that it really automatically, more or less automatically at least, captures everything that's happening, and I think we're moving in that direction, and I think it's actually quite exciting. So I think we're not fully there yet that conversational intelligence tools can really understand the entire transcript and automatically fill in all the fields in the CRM, but I also think we're not super far away from it. And then you can build all these beautiful models around it. And so hopefully the future will be even less work for AEs on that front. Just using technology to give them more time focusing on the selling and relationship building piece.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that probability piece is already existing, right? We're scoring our deals, and the score just has to be correct or accurate, at least a little bit accurate. So you have to then make sure that you have good habits, like you said, in the sales process. And if those habits are being tracked, eventually the tool will then learn what is a good deal and what is a bad deal, and give the right scoring. So being able to actually trust the score, that is kind of like the goal. And I think WP Engine got to the point where that score was actually quite accurate and Clary. So but it takes a lot of work, and it is a process, and it will take a few months until the team can get there.
Yeah, I heard Clary time to value is somewhere between 3 to 6 months, which is of course like a very long time. It's very expensive. So
I would say it's more than 3 to 6 months.
More than 3 to 6 months. Yeah, I love to hear that, because Weflow typically is faster. So
I'm gonna pay that.
To our listeners, don't even check out Clary. It's not worth it. So
I'm not biased. Maybe I am. Yeah.
No. Cool. So what advice? So for those who will be going through like a similar transition between companies as you did, what kind of advice would you give to them?
I usually, like, my approach when I start a new job is to get into different teams not related to revenue operations. So like, is there a culture team? Is there a team which has like, a committee for a certain purpose? And just get into something which is like a more cross-functional view, and you get to know a lot of people who you might meet in the future, but also you get to understand kind of like what is the culture about. So there's like a lot of positive aspects, but like looking at the actual role, I think that is super helpful to get to know a lot of people, and to also get to know the product team, which you usually don't start working with from day one. People from the legal team, again, you don't really start working with them from day one. It's usually just sales, marketing, customer success. But that creates that visibility, like also your persona, and creating a brand in the team and in the business that is very valuable. Then being patient, I already said that. Don't think that you can make a change within the first 2 weeks. I mean, it's super. You start a new job and you think, okay, I need to show them that I'm valuable and that I can do this job. But obviously, yes, do that. But at the same time, just don't put too much pressure on yourself, and just be patient to understand what it is about. each business has their own goals, understand those goals, and see how you can make the biggest impact. Like you with your skill set and the team you have, what is things you can do very quickly, and you can kind of like see, okay, this is some low growing fruit, which you can kind of like make sure you can, have an easy impact and a quick impact. But then there is some bigger pieces which will take time, create that. And there is going to be a lot of push from the business because it is a fast moving environment. But you have to make sure you're doing it properly and you set a foundation, which is a proper foundation. Educate the business as well. Like not every business understands what revenue operations is actually. Like everybody has a different understanding of operations. You can ask like the CEO, who will have a different understanding maybe to the sales manager. So you need to make sure all teams are aligned and understand what you're there for. And you also have to understand what you're there for because every business has a different understanding. So there is something super valuable to make sure that people know why you're there and what you're supposed to do and what impact you can have on the business.
I love the concept of like, focusing on like low-hanging fruits first, and then kind of like, or like initially at least like a few low-hanging fruits, build some trust, use that to build trust, show everyone that you can be trusted and do a good job. And then, with that trust, take it like to the next level, and start these larger efforts. I think when I led my first product team, I was all about low-hanging fruits. And when I left the company, I was actually gifted like a low-hanging fruit basket. Like, I'll never forget that. So that was.
See, I just forgot what it's called, low-hanging fruit. That's it. That's a good gift.
Okay. Alexandra, I think this is a perfect moment to end. Thank you so much. We always ask our questions one final question, and what I want to ask you today is, looking back at your career, what is something outstanding that someone has done for you that has truly impacted your life or work life?
It's not maybe like one person, there's multiple people. And I was very fortunate to have very good leaders and to have people who would always have my back. And like at WP Engine, I had very amazing female leaders, especially. So I had a great mentor. She was just like there from day one, supporting me in every single thing. And because I did have that issue of me being here, like in this country all by myself, and she was in the US. So it was kind of like, I had supports, and at the same time I could learn on my own, and that was super, super valuable. But then also having those advocates, so people who speak about you in the room and they're actually very supportive about what you do. So I had amazing female leaders at WP Engine who were always there to do exactly that, and who taught me how to do that with my team. So being able to actually adopt that to my work and to my management style. And also, I mean, the power of saying no, that's like another thing which I wanted to bring up. There is a lot of things we can do and everybody has great ideas, but there needs to be somebody who just says, hey guys, not yet, or not now, or just no. So I think that is, that was very valuable. And I learned that very early as well. And it doesn't have to be in a negative way, but sometimes it's just the best for the business to say no. So,
Yeah, tough to do, but say no more often and pay it forward, right?
I do that.
Yeah. No, I love that. Great, Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining, thank
you.
Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.